Thanks everyone for joining us for today's program. Today we're looking at managing the funding in our NDIS plans. I'm Andrea Salmon, one of the Education Program Coordinators here at MS, and I'll be facilitating today's webinar, and I've got Lauren Houlder online with me today waiting in the wings. We start all our programs with an acknowledgement, and in the spirit of reconciliation, MS Limited acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and acknowledge their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples with us today. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Lauren Houlder. Lauren is one of our NDIS team. She's actually one of the managers in the NDIS area, and she has a background in counselling, community services and disability. She's worked in aged care, in disability, she's worked with young children and young people, as well as working with adults. And she assists in the NDIS program, really trying to help participants to gain the most out of their plan. And in her time working in the NDIS space, she's really developed an understanding and an appreciation of the small life-changing components of independence that can really make a difference for people. So Lauren brings her expertise to us today, and it's great to have you online, Lauren. So I'm going to ask Lauren to pop on her camera, and I'll turn mine off so you can hear what Lauren's got to share with us.
All right, so let's get started. If you have any questions about any component of this, then feel free to put it in the chat and we can have a little bit of a Q&A at the end. I'm happy to go over something as we go through as well.
And when Lauren says that, she actually means the question area, because sometimes there is a chat, but we don't use the chat. So please pop it in the question area. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, that's okay. So what are your plan options? So there's 4 ways, technically 3. However, there's a 4th way of managing your plans. So how are the funds spent? How are the funds managed through your NDIS plan? So we're going to take a look at plan management for a really deep dive into plan management, but we'll take a look at self, agency and a combination of that. Will help you understand a little bit about the pros and cons so that you can make the best decision for you. So we now have NDIA Managed. So this may look like on your NDIS plan, Agency Managed. Agency Managed means that all of your invoices and all of your services are paid for by the NDIA directly. When we say NDIA, we mean the National Disability Insurance Agency, not the scheme. So the NDIS will manage the funds on your behalf. So the providers will bill directly to the NDIS once they have created a service booking. A service booking is the provider allocating a specific amount of funding for the services they're going to provide for you. As they provide those services, they withdraw from that funding. So some pros and cons. So as an NDIA managed participant, you have everything's managed by the NDIA, which means there's a lot less for you to have to do, a lot less to have to worry about. The bills are paid, there's no paperwork, you don't have to retain all these receipts, and you don't have to pay for anything up front and be reimbursed later. However, you can only choose providers that are registered, so that is NDIS registered, not just an ABN. You also cannot negotiate on the prices of every service. I'm not too sure how familiar everyone is with the support catalogue or the price guide. Those are service prices dictated by the NDIA and they cannot be swayed if you are NDIS managed. The second option is plan management. So plan management is essentially a bit of a bookkeeper or an accountant. That person is processing the financial transactions. So they're going through the invoices and they're paying them. They don't make decisions. They don't actually do anything but process that. So they will receive the invoices from your providers, and then they will check with you, did this happen? If that's what you'd like. Sometimes you don't want to be involved. You just assume that the provider's all good and all the services will be all good. You might even want your support coordinator, which isn't always necessary and mostly isn't necessary, to approve those services, or you may have a friend or a family member. The plan manager will then go to the NDIS and then will request that invoice be paid to them. And then once that invoice has been paid, they pay the provider. So that does mean that there can be a bit of a delay. So with NDIA Managed, we spoke about the NDIS paying the provider directly, which means there's no middleman. So that's pretty quick. That could be the same day, that could be the same hour, it could also be up to a week. With a plan manager, some plan managers need to, it is policy for plan managers to be paid prior. However, some plan managers can pay, stick to the rules and pay as the NDIS have paid them, which means that you will have a bit of a delay no matter what. All providers must have an ABN. So this is for self-plan agency managed. Everyone needs to have an ABN. You can't have your neighbour next door who would like to mow. You can't have them just given a mow. They need to have an ABN. So some plan managers, they have their own, I'll go into the pros actually, I'll just be very clear. So the claims are managed for you. They are a bit more flexible in that you don't have to actually use NDIS managed providers. You can use any provider from anywhere. You'd still have to deal with paperwork, but you don't have to retain it. So these plan managers will retain this paperwork for you. By paperwork, I mean service agreements, so contracts, invoices, and any reimbursement claims. So that could be the receipt for the Dyson. They'll send you monthly statements, so that could be how much you spent or how much you haven't spent, and they'll also monitor if you've got anything, if it's not making sense, if you've really underspent. They'll say, hey, you've got 60 grand left and you only have two months left in your plan. You might want to do something about this. Plan managers, though, won't be the ones to tell you how to do that. So you don't have to tell your providers that you're on the NDIS if you have a plan manager. You do if you are agency managed. That means that you can have Jim's Mowing providing a service for you, and they have absolutely no idea that you have MS, that you are on the NDIS, that you have a disability. It is just an ordinary service, just as everybody else receives, and you are in control of how much that costs. So you would be able to go around and get it at a cheaper rate, because it can be up to $51 per hour for that yard maintenance stuff. So it can bring that cost down. And I know a lot of people are really mindful that this is government money and it is real money that translates to time. There doesn't have to be any upfront costs for you when you are plan managed. And you can also still allocate funding specifically for certain providers. That means that they quarantine. Sorry, I hate using quarantine during COVID. It's a terrible, dirty word. They can allocate funding for specific providers for personal care or for transport or for the yard or cleaning or meals. That can be set aside so you don't ever overspend in that section or underspend. It means that you aren't chopping and changing and you don't need to worry and monitor things too much. But you can also be reimbursed. So you have the flexibility of purchasing something on your own with approval. I wouldn't just go out and buy the latest LG mop, although they are quite cool. Gain permission, make sure it is reasonable and necessary, confirm it with your plan manager, then purchase it, and then you can send the invoice to the plan manager. They'll keep the invoice. You probably want to keep it for warranty anyway, but then that can be reimbursed to you. So again, nobody has to know that any of this is happening, that you are on the NDIS at all, or how this is actually being paid long term. Some cons though. So we spoke earlier about some delays. The NDIS is quite quick in payments, but there can be delays when you're not overly sure about if something is reasonable and necessary. It can also mean, since you can be reimbursed, that you might purchase something and not have permission first. And by permission, I just mean a guarantee that that invoice will be paid by your plan manager. So there can be some delays, especially if your plan manager isn't up to scratch. I think most people have experienced at some stage a plan manager that has either too many participants that's taking on or not enough staff to complete the role. This means that there can be even more delays. The best thing to do is to, if you are in that situation of having a plan manager who's not up to scratch, is either speak to them about it, ask them what's going on, or look elsewhere. If you have a coordinator, they can help out. If you have an LAC, even they can help out. Or have a Google search and look at some reviews. There's heaps of reviews out there on pretty much every provider that's NDIS registered. Plan managers have to be NDIS registered. You can't just use your bookkeeper, but it is very easy to find a lot of providers. Option 3, self-management. So you are responsible solely for paying for all invoices. That means that every single document needs to go through you. It does mean that you're in a lot of control, but invoices and payments will need to come to you. You will need to keep the record of every invoice for, I think it's 5 years, and you'll need to submit all of those invoices via the NDIS portal. So that's through MyGov and then through NDIS. That can be pretty daunting. It can be overwhelming. Some people, it works great because you can kind of do whatever you like, theoretically. You still need to follow reasonable and necessary. Yes, no one is overseeing necessarily the immediate purchases, but in the event of an audit, if it's found that you've bought, you've bought a cheap Nissan and you've claimed it through your NDIS plan and that got approved, that does not necessarily mean that you will not get audited later and you'll need to pay back the NDIS $2,000. So I would still be mindful. So some pros, again, that flexibility, it's really, really flexible. You can use registered and non-registered. As with plan management, you can use registered and non-registered. You can really, really negotiate with this. So with plan management, you can negotiate prices down, but with self-management, you can actually negotiate prices up. And I know that sounds odd, but that means that you don't have to follow the price guide at all. So say you have a psychologist and that psychologist is great at MS, or for anyone that doesn't have MS that's watching or is watching for another person, say someone is amazing at the disability or the condition that you or someone else has, and their cost far exceeds, hopefully not too far, the amount that the NDIS price guide stipulates, you are able to go above that rate. I would still suggest trying to make a bit of a negotiation, but you are able to pay above. Again, you're responsible for everything. You need to keep everything and you need to monitor it all. You can receive an additional amount on top of, instead of plan management, you can actually be trained by a plan manager in how to excel at self-management. It's not a great amount, and you can also pay for it out of your core supports to have someone help teach you how to monitor and implement your plan as a self-management participant. But it can get quite tricky. If you're experiencing any cognition decline, I would suggest making a real good pros and cons list before making a decision about any of these. It is a really great option that we have next, though, is the combination. So I assume that quite a few people, when they read that there were 4 options and they've got experience in this, thought, oh, what? There's not 4. But we count the 4th as a combination. So that could be that you have your core supports, you have that self-managed. So core supports, any of your direct support is self-managed where you're paying out of pocket. You have your capacity building, so your therapies and your support coordination, you have that as agency managed. because you most likely would like to use a registered provider that does physio OT. And then you could have your home modifications and assistive technology that could be agency managed as well. It is everybody's right to request a plan management plan. It's not everybody's right to be self-managed because there are complications, and some people it can be difficult. It does require training, and it does require a high level of trust and confidence in yourself. But anybody can ask to be plan managed. The NDIS cannot really deny that. So if you are agency managed and you're feeling that you're not getting the services that you'd like, or you'd like to just have a change, you just want someone to help, that extra level of assistance, you're more than able to tell the LAC or the planner that you want to be plan managed, and they cannot deny you unless you have been found to be not of sound. So some pros and cons of that: you're able to choose some unregistered providers that way. It's like I said, you can have gyms, you could have pretty much anyone from any provider. You could use a cleaner off Gumtree. Some of the invoices will be processed for you. So if you have big ticket items, so that's why I would suggest capacity building, potentially being a plan management section, because some of those invoices can be $600. I know that physios can actually go up to about $200. That's a lot of out-of-pocket expense. But at the same time, you can also have that in core or anywhere else where you are paying out of pocket. So you will need to manage the paperwork. It's up to you. It's just how it works for you. You can test it. It's a great way to test. Do I feel confident in being able to pay for all of these services and being able to pay? So by being able to pay, I mean upfront. Do I feel that I have the finances to make these payments prior to reimbursement? Because they could really add up really quickly. If you have someone providing personal care, so self-care in the morning, at lunch, and at night, and you are also having domestic assistance, so you're having cleaning, you've also got someone, say, U-Foods, delivering food, and then on weekends, you have the gardener, and then you have someone taking you to church on a Sunday. Those services could equate to, that could be $1,500 a week. So making sure that you have the means prior to being reimbursed is really, really important. But this is a great way to put the feelers out there and see how you go. So we have a bunch of handouts. So we handed out a FAQ regarding ABN, bank accounts, service agreements, contracts, support and help, recording of phone calls, the funding for plan management, and separate email addresses. So if you have any further questions, I'm not too sure if we've given out my email, or you can call MS Connect and ask for me, or ask for the equivalent of me in Melbourne. Her name is Kim, and we are more than happy to help out with further questions, but MS Connect are just as competent as us. MS is a registered provider, so you're able to use us regardless of your payment method. So we help with pre-planning. So that is the getting onto the NDIS, and I understand a couple of people that are here may be actually applying for the NDIS or considering applying for the NDIS. We can absolutely help with that process. That is through MS Connect. We do support coordination, so that is the area that I am the manager for. I am for New South Wales and ACT. However, there's, as I said before, another one of me in Vic and Tas. We have short-term accommodation in Vic, so that is respite. Then we have community participation, so that is, yoga and dance and all those kind of fun alternative therapies. We have that in Lidcombe, and I think a couple in some other areas of New South Wales. We have exercise physiology in our Lidcombe gym, so most people are aware of that gym. It's great. We have special continence assessments. So we have continence nurses who are able to complete that for you at over telehealth, but in Vic and New South Wales. The clinic in New South Wales is at Lidcombe, and that is actually completely free. So that is a government initiative. So you do not even need to use your NDIS plan. We have physio and OT in New South Wales, Tas and Vic, and we have plan management as it is a telehealth, so an online phone and email service that that's everywhere, every state, that's completely national. You most likely won't see your plan manager, but it isn't really a necessary component. That is also in the FAQs. All right, I'd like to invite everyone to ask any questions.
Absolutely. Lauren, that's fabulous. Thank you. I'm actually going to suggest, can I go back a slide? And while people please pop your questions in, I've got a couple here all ready to go, but I'd love to hear questions from the people that are online. In terms of some useful hints and tips, Lauren, tell us a bit more about the, because this is a tip I picked up from you last time. So around when you're having a phone call with someone from the NDIA or the NDIS, what's your hint around asking for the record of that call?
Yes, so once they press save on their note, so as with everyone, you're entering an email, that email doesn't go anywhere until you press send. Similar with their record management system, they have to actually press save or enter. And once they do that, up pops a reference number for that particular note. So you may have found that at times when you're calling the NDIA for a second time or a third time, there's no record of your conversation. That could very well be, it's not in every instance, but that could very well be because no one pressed save. So you might have had this 2-hour phone call or 2-hour hold time and 2-minute phone call, and that conversation wasn't actually saved. So requesting the client the reference number for the call means that they may say, okay, let me put you on hold and I'll come back. Difficult to say, but it could be 5, could be 10, could be 15 minutes. Then I'll have typed that entire note in, and then you will have that reference number. Put that reference number down. I've suggested before to have your own email address for the NDIS, regardless of your funding management type. Having a separate email address means you don't have to deal with all this incoming stuff and you know exactly where to go. You don't need to stress about deleting emails or putting it in a different file. Just keep it all there. You type a word into the search and it comes up. It's a lot easier for everybody. I personally do it for all of my participants. I set them up. But the reference number, just record it down. If you have a support coordinator, let them know that you gave the NDIS a call and just give them that number, and then they're able to refer back to it. So the next time you call, you can just say, hey, I already called, here's the reference number. And they will say, all right, no problems, give me a sec, just have a look.
I thought that was a fabulous tip. Yeah. And the same with the separate email. I think that's a fabulous tip. I know some people might be hesitant to have another place to look, but just having a completely separate place where all the correspondence around your NDIS plan, I thought that was excellent.
It's so stressful.
Thought about it. Yeah, for sure. And I really appreciated also you talking about that it's everyone's right to have plan management. Who pays for that?
So the NDIS allocate a certain amount for, it is a set amount for plan management. So whatever the duration of your plan is, it's, gosh, I forget how much it is per month, but it's a set amount per month plus an establishment fee for each plan that you have, which means some plan managers, if your plan's chopping and changing, may receive a few implementation amounts, which questionable, but it happens. So the NDIS will give you separate funding specifically for plan management. So it doesn't come out of anywhere and you're not able to use it from anywhere. It's what we call a stated item. A stated item means it can only be used for that specific purpose.
And you don't have to be specially eligible for that? Everybody is eligible?
It's everybody's right. They have to prove your eligibility. So innocent until proven guilty, that
Okay,
kind of motto.
Cool. Now, questions are coming in. Thank you, everyone. Please pop your question in. This is a great chance to quiz Lauren on anything that you're concerned about. Carolyn's got a question. What do we do when the provider agrees on a price and then when they learn that it's NDIS, the price goes up?
Ditch them. I guess that's what I would suggest. I suppose that's why I would keep it on the down low, because all of a sudden they hear, oh, what do you mean I don't have to charge you 35? I can charge you 49. It's really quite common, unfortunately. So I try not to advise. I mean, I'm sure that you didn't actually out yourself. It just happened.
Mm.
I would ask them if they feel comfortable discriminating against you because you have a disability, because that's how I see it.
She's actually just added that it's common and it's ugly. Yes, it is, Carolyn.
Very
Absolutely.
ugly.
Gina's got a question. Sorry, I'm having to read this and with a concentrating face on. Gina said she's sorry she missed what you suggested around the combo plan. For example, CB funds to be plan managed. What do you suggest for the core supports, please?
So core supports, because you don't have, it means that there's no, so I suppose what we just spoke about then with providers suddenly costing a whole bunch more, I'm assuming that that's mostly in core supports. That's where I see it the most. All of a sudden, that lawn that if you paid Jimmy down the road is $20, it suddenly becomes 51 because you have a cane. I don't get it. I don't understand why it's any different. So I would suggest having core, dipping your toe into having core as a self-management or plan management option, and keeping capacity building, CB is what you referred to, as an agency or plan managed option. It just means you don't have to worry about that really high cost. But like I said, core can get really high as well. So if you're not receiving too many supports and under core, then feel free to use self-management. But you can also not tell your provider that you have a plan manager, because you can be reimbursed by your plan manager. That's also your right. So long as you have a service agreement submitted to the plan manager or a contract, you can have a contract with any provider. It doesn't matter if you have a disability or not. You can absolutely send that to your plan manager and say, I'll be sending you recurring invoices that I have already paid, and that will be me seeking reimbursement. And that means that you are basically doing self-management, but you're a little bit safer.
Great. Gillian's got a question. She says she's self-managed, but with support coordination help from MS for contacts for services, etc. So her question is, I've paid invoices and then entered them for reimbursement, but have not been able to find out to see the total amount that I've used under the different core or capacity building sections. Doesn't matter if I even put in the initial date of the start of the plan. Is there some way to see the total payments made?
In a way, I suppose you can't see the total payments made, but you see the total amount spent and the total amount remaining. I suppose I can see what you mean. Have I spent this amount on this provider? And that's where being self-management is difficult, because you kind of have to monitor it a different way. Maybe have a chat to your coordinator. I'm not too sure who it is, but have a chat to the coordinator and see if maybe it's just a matter of reading the version of your plan that's on the My Portal, having a version of looking at that a little bit differently, because that can be updated live. Part of the reason that plan management is so great, I sound like I'm pushing it, but it's I just appreciate it. They have a live version of funds spent, where you've allocated your funds, how much has been removed from that allocation, and just generally it shows that really strong budget maintenance. It's just so easy to look at, and what you're saying here is, yeah, that's kind of the complication of self-management. It's really difficult to keep on top of because it's just growing forever. But have a chat to your coordinator and see, because they're totally able to help you take a look at what's going on and if anything's working or not. You're able to change your management style. You don't have to. You can absolutely keep it the way you are. Just have a chat to your coordinator. If they're not too confident, then ask MS Connect for me. I'm happy to help.
Great. Okay, thank you. I'll just go through the last few slides to allow people a bit extra time if you would like to type in a question. So this is our question area. So again, like Lauren, we just want to encourage you that we're here to support you with whatever you need. So whether that's in the NDIS space, whether it's around employment support, whether it's around residential care or wellbeing and peer support, around other education programs, that's what we're here for. So please check out all the other services that we offer. And some of the other resources, just to let you know about, we have a podcast series. If you're into podcasts, there's a growing number of podcasts available. We have our In Touch that you would all be receiving as a newsletter, hard copy and e-newsletters, and our webinar library. So all the programs that we run live end up as a recording and are available for you to access anytime through the webinar library. Interactive and online tools, there's the Get Your Act Together tool. That's around symptom management. And then there's another tool on the website that's called Eat Well, Live Well. And that's really very much looking at your nutrition around, again, around your symptoms. And then we have online live events through Facebook. So, new and interesting things happening all the time. So let me go back and double check. There's another question popped in. Carolyn's wondering, can money be shifted from core to consumables?
Oh, good question. So consumables kind of is core. So long as you have $1 remaining in your consumables budget, you're able to use your core. So your daily activities is what we specifically mean. And you're able to use your social and community and your daily activities. They're interchangeable. It's just really money in that section. I would still make sure you can't purchase anything that is solely $1,500 in its own. Anything above that cannot be purchased. You'll need to get permission, but I would seek approval for pretty much anything if you're exceeding the low risk consumables budget. If you're just purchasing continence products, then I wouldn't really bother with getting any approval. That's not your problem at all, that you've been underfunded or that your needs have changed. I wouldn't bother with that. But if it's that you're getting built up spoons or you need a new walker, some component of technology, then I would seek approval if you have run out of low risk. I hope that helped.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Lauren, for your time today and sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you.
Sorry, what is the low risk value for technology?
Pretty much everyone's funded 1,500, so you can't spend above that on a single item.
Okay. So again, I'll say thank you, and thanks everyone for participating, because with your great questions, what you're asking might be what someone else is thinking. So, we love the question and answer time because it sort of brings up the real issues and the real concerns. Yeah, and it's great to have them answered. So for today, that's it. And we'll look forward to seeing you on other programs. I would please ask you to just stay online to answer a few questions that will pop up at the end of the webinar. That helps us develop new programs. It gives us some feedback on how you found today, but also if you've got any other ideas or other things that you would like to see us run, that's where you get the chance to have your say. So please do that to help us out. And thanks again, Lauren, for your time. And a couple of other things coming in. I think we'll follow them up afterwards. So thanks everyone for being online today. We'll look forward to seeing you at future programs.
Thank you.